and welcome to the second module in qualitative research. In the first module, we have briefly understood the concept of qualitative research and we have also talked about the paradigms and beliefs associated with researcher. In brief, we have gathered a common understanding on these 5 bullet points in the first module. The first point says that a qualitative researcher can take up an epistemological position which is towards constructivist or interpretivist view. We have also discussed that in qualitative research there is a lot of flexibility given to the researcher in terms of sampling, in terms of data analysis, in terms of data collection and many more. Then we have also talked about that in qualitative research the researcher becomes an instrument. So qualitative research is nothing but the reflexivity of the researcher. But here one point that I would like to emphasize upon is that we need to be very cautious about being subjective versus being biased. Being subjective is important because your own interpretation will convert the observation into a research. But being biased has its own problems associated. We'll talk about it. Then we also talked about the generalization, that generalization is not the objective of qualitative research. Then we also discussed towards the end that qualitative research requires a lot of text, a lot of narrative rather than the numbers or quants. So text becomes an empirical evidence or empirical source of information for the qualitative researcher. Now let's talk about various approaches. Before we move on to the approaches, I must confess one thing, that till 1970s there was no term as qualitative research. So what was there? The only thing that was existent for 1970 was the positivist view, the view which says that there is only a single solution, that the reality exists without the researcher. So positivist view was dominating till 1960s, 1970s, and then the approach of grounded theory came in the year 1968. After that, there were several books which started coming into the market and several researchers started talking about it, and the acceptance of qualitative research has actually increased after 1970s thanks to the professors of US who coined the term grounded theory. Now there are thousands of different approaches, if not thousand, maybe 100. So if I talk about grounded theory itself, there are three or more than three different versions of it. Now in this video lecture, I would try to cover three most common approaches, which are ethnography, grounded theory and case study. Along with this video lecture, I have given you three research papers. I am sure all of you must have received those papers on each of these three approaches. All three papers are written from an Indian perspective. So you can just go through those papers either before this video or after this video in order to correlate the things that I am saying and that are being done by the researchers. So what is ethnography? Ethnography is a concept which has its roots in anthropology and sociology. Now, ethnographers are the kind of people who actually go to a specific culture, who make a visit to a society or to a specific ethnic group or to a specific tribe, and then they try to observe the most common behavior, the most common understanding, the common belief that they may have. And out of that, they try to examine what kind of variation that culture may have. And there is a term called as participant observation, which takes the driver's seat. Now, what does participant observation mean? Participant observation means that as a researcher, I am not only to go and interview them. I'm not only to go and do some observation. I have to live with my target group. I have to experience the kind of problems, the kind of challenges, the kind of lifestyle, the kind of situation that they face. So I need to become a participant before I start observing that particular group. Again, in the field of marketing, the concepts like quasi-ethnography and virtual ethnography are being used. What is the procedure? So before you get into this approach, you need to understand what is the objective of my research. If your objective is to understand and analyze a specific group of people, for example, the paper that I have shared with you, it talks about the issues of a construction worker in Kerala. So it decides upon one topic or one issue which the researcher is interested in knowing. So you need to understand that which group, do you want to study, which location do you want to visit, and then what kind of issues you may be interested in. And once you have understood both the things, then the objective is, the next thing is to visit the place, to live there, to experience, and then simultaneously collect the data through observation, through interviews, and through focus group. And then eventually you come out with a description of that culture. Correct. So it's about sociology and anthropology that I've told, but a lot of people in organization behavior or management are also making use of this study. The paper that I've shared with you has a title called as "The Cultural Politics of Wages: Ethnography of Construction Worker in India." The second approach that is very common, if you talk about qualitative research, people will generally ask, are you using grounded theory? So what is grounded theory? Now, grounded theory is a concept which was coined by Glacier and Strauss in 1968. They published their first book, and this concept talks about coming up with a theory inductively. They say that we need to go beyond the description and get into generating or discovering a theory which is more what do you call as uh, generalized, or which can be used by the further researchers to empirically test. So what do they do? So the idea here is that we need to again go to a field. We need to understand the kind of experiences that they have, and then we have to come up with a phenomena or a process that they experience. Now here we have to understand two things, that as a researcher I need to detach myself from the participants' experiences. I am supposed to reflect upon, or I am supposed to discuss or evolve the theory out of the experiences of the participants. Now, here comes the problem, that whether I should go to the field without having any prejudice, without having any subjectivity, I cannot do that. I will definitely have my own notions, my own prejudice, my own subjectivity associated. So, what to do? Now, here you have two different approaches. I will skip this slide and I will talk about the versions of a grounded theory. So the first version, which was given by Glacier and Strauss, it talks about the classical grounded theory. Now, what did Glacier said? Glacier said that more focused reading only occurs when emergent theory is sufficiently developed to allow the literature to be used as an additional data. So what does it mean? It means that the literature should come towards the end. It should not happen that you first read the literature, because the literature may makes you little biased. Literature may makes you little confined. So the objective here was in the classical grounded theory that you need not to read the literature in plenty, but if you see the era in 1967 and in 2020, so we are almost 60 years ahead or 50 plus years ahead. So now if you go out without reading the literature, what will you get? You may get hundreds of things to observe. But once you come back and do a Google search, a Google Scholar research, you will see there are thousands of papers already published there. So that is why there was a debate that whether we should read the literature or whether we should read the literature after we come back from the field. That is why there was a fight between Glacier and Strauss. Glacier was of the opinion that we should allow the theory to emerge automatically out of the experiences of the observants. Whereas the second approach, which was given by Strauss, he says that we should read the literature before we enter into the field, and then it should be an iterative process. You go to the field, you come back, you perform the literature review, and then you go back to the field again. You talk to people, you make certain observation, you do some interviews, and then you come back. So it can be an iterative process. And then the other difference between these two opinions was that in the first opinion, in the classical grounded theory, the focus was that the experiences of the respondent should be allowed to fit into a theory automatically. Whereas in the second view, which is called as the Straussian view, that suggests that we need to force the or we should force the data to fit into the theory that we are trying to develop or that we are expecting to emerge out of the experiences that we have got. But more or less, the common thing is that the objective is to emerge the theory automatically, and researchers should be detached from the experiences. He should make, again, there was a third professor who came in. I'll talk about these three versions. So if I summarize what Glacier and Strauss and said, there was a third opinion, Charmas. She also entered into the discussion. Charmas, there is a very beautiful book by Charmas. She has talked about the grounded theory in a much detailed way. So what do these three people have said? Glacier says that we need to emphasize upon post-positivist, since he says that there cannot be only one theory or only one truth. So he says that we are close to positivist, but we are little ahead because we cannot uncover the truth completely. So we are close to the truth. Interpretivist view, which is more preferred by Corbin and Strauss, it says that it's not about the truth, it's about the interpretation of the researcher. It's about how you perceive and how you derive meaning out of it. Whereas Charmas suggests that we should rather follow a constructivist view. Constructivist view means we should let a discussion between researcher and the participants. So both the forces should what do you call as discuss and confront with each other, and then there must be a theory which should automatically be emerge out. Now, there is a paper that I've shared with all of you. The paper talks about knowledge hiding behavior. Now, knowledge hiding behavior is a phenomenon that has been investigated on R&D professionals. It's a paper written by two professors. One is Professor Jha and second Professor Biju Varki. It's an interesting paper which talks about the application of grounded theory in the field of management. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. Please reserve them. The third approach that we have is case study approach. In this approach, the objective is very, very clear. The objective is neither to discover a theory nor to uncover a culture. Here, the objective is to solve a problem which exists in a bounded system. Now, bounded system means that you have a precise objective of what you are trying to do, or you have a context available. So case study approach is largely used in action research or in more of learning way, where you want to learn the experiences of one company or set of companies or one industry, and you want to share that learning with other industries or other companies. Case study approach is quite common. People in management field they prefer to write cases. So what do we do in case study? We identify a case or we identify an issue first. That I want to understand the concerns of supply chain management, and I want to understand the issues with respect to the SMEs or with respect to the family owned business. So I need to identify one, an issue, and second, the case. Case means the industry or the context or the organization where I may like to understand the problem. And then you determine the suitability again, whether that industry is or that company is suitable for that, or whether this issue makes a sense or not. Then you collect data through multiple methods. It's not only qualitative data that you will get, you may at times get some secondary data and some quantitative data also. So you may get some numbers, you may get some balance sheets, you may get some financial data also. So it depends upon what your problem is and what kind of case have you picked up, what kind of industry have you picked up. And then you just need to understand, analyze through several means, and then you have to just share the learning or the meaning or the recommendation with the other industries. So it's more about writing a success story for a company, wherein or a failure for a company. And this is more commonly used in management. The case study that I've shared with all of you talks about supply chain management capabilities of SMEs or small and medium family business India. Again, they have taken multiple sources of data, and it's a multiple case study approach. I think you have a lot of questions, but before you come up in the live session, I request you to please read these three, four books or maybe the abstract of these books. And these books are available online or you may get them on Google Books. Thank you so much.